Here's some advice on how to embed quotations in your writing. It's something that we've noticed across the board that you're not 100% confident with, so we thought we'd give you some advice, and this video contains 3 different methods that you can use to embed quotations, and you might choose to use one of those, 2 of them, or all 3. Let's start with things to avoid, because this is what we need to undo in your writing. A lot of you are using the word quote, and we'd like you to start cutting that word out of your essay. The reason for that is when you're writing an essay on a piece of literature or a source, you're not writing about quotes, you're writing about language, you're writing about characters, you're writing about statements. So you shouldn't really need to use the word quote at all, because what you're doing there is minimizing the literature down to just a series of little soundbite quotes. And what tends to happen is, if you look at the second example, you get what's called a floating quote. So you'll see here you've got "the sun was out, full stop." This quote shows that. That's called a floating quote because it's dropped into the middle of the page, and then you'll put the quote in because you're not quite sure how to embed it. You're not quite sure how to make it flow. It's perfectly normal, and unless you've been taught it explicitly or you can remember when you were taught explicitly, it won't come that easily or that naturally, but hopefully the next few minutes will help you to solve these problems. So let's avoid floating quotes, and let's avoid the word quote in general. You've got to remember the key thing about a quote is that it's someone else's words. A quote comes from someone else's writing, and you lift it out of their writing and put it into your own. So to do that properly, we need to signal to the reader that they're about to read someone else's words. So we use what are called signal words to tell the reader, in a second, you're going to see someone else's point of view, or you're going to read someone else's words that I've lifted and put into my writing. So signal words are things like according to, claims, points out, discusses, proposes, notes, states, writes, demonstrates, argues, explains, and then says. So the bottom one, you can use that in any essay. You can use that in a literature essay, you can use it in a language essay, and the same applies to quite a few of these others. So I'm going to show you how you use these signal words to signify when you're about to use someone else's words. So the first way that you can embed a quote is using a signal word and embedding with a comma. So when you embed with a comma, what you do is you choose a signal word, and then you follow the signal word with a comma, and then you put your quote. And the key thing here is the quote, if it follows a comma, the quote must have a capital letter at the start. So the rules for embedding with a comma are: you have your signal word, a comma, a quotation mark, and a capital letter. So then you get things like, as Holmes suggests, comma, quotation mark, capital. Whatever remains must be the truth. Watson feels annoyed and states, comma, quotation mark, capital, you really are an automaton. In Article B, Smith writes, comma, quotation mark, capital, it was not necessary to use the word quote. So you've got there 3 examples of embedded quotes, and as you can see, if you use those signal words followed by a comma, the writing flows. As Holmes suggests, whatever remains must be the truth. Watson feels annoyed and states, you really are an automaton. The key thing to remember is, after your signal word and your comma, don't forget to put a capital letter. That's the grammatically correct way of embedding with a comma. So, signal word, comma, quotation mark, capital letter. That's option number 1. Option number 2 now. You can use the word that to build the quote within your sentence. So just use the word that. Now the key thing with this is you still need your signal word, then you put the word that, but this time you don't need a comma. You do need a quotation mark, but you don't need a capital. So rather than having comma, capital, you just have that, no capital. So in chapter 1, Ralph says, signal word, that, no comma, quotation mark, no capital, there are no adults. Arguably, Holmes shows emotion only once in the novel when, at Pondicherry Lodge, he looks through the keyhole and tells, signal word, Watson, that, no comma, quotation mark, no capital, there is something devilish in this. Source B suggests the opposite, with the writer proposing, signal word, that, no comma, quotation mark, no capital, nobody could hear a thing. So with that, you don't need a comma and you don't need a capital. And the way I remember it is telling myself, that's it. That is it. You just need that. No comma, no capital. That is it. No comma, no capital. Now, the third and final way that you can embed a quote into your writing is by using a colon. Now, I know we've been doing this a little bit in lessons, and it's worth just reminding ourselves of the rules. So, first of all, in order to use a colon, you must have a complete sentence before the colon. So, by a complete sentence, I mean a full statement. You need a proper statement before the colon. Then you put your colon, and then after the colon you put your quote. Now this time you do need a capital letter because the colon acts almost as a full stop. So you must have a complete statement, and then what happens is the quote serves to support your statement. So for example, Ralph knows he is in trouble. That's a complete statement. Ralph knows he is in complete trouble, or in trouble. Then you have colon, quotation mark, capital letter. They sharpen the stick at both ends. Next one, the writer in source B feels very differently. That is a complete sentence. That is a full statement. The writer in source B feels very differently. Colon, capital. I knew it was going to be a nightmare as soon as I stepped off the plane. And then finally, Scrooge feels a sudden sense of guilt. That's a statement, followed with a colon, followed with a capital. Have they no refuge or resource? So, complete sentence, then put a colon, normal quotation mark, and then a capital letter. Ralph knows he's in trouble. They sharpen the stick at both ends. Scrooge feels a sudden sense of guilt. Have they no refuge or resource? So things to remember for your next essays are signal words. So by using those signal words, you will signal to the reader that they're about to read someone's words that aren't yours. It will also help you to embed that quote if you use those words. Secondly, if you use a comma following the signal word, don't forget the capital. So comma goes with capital. If you use that as the method, remember that is that. That's all. No comma or capital needed. That is all. And then finally, if you put a complete sentence, you can then use a colon and then follow that with your quote. So a complete sentence followed by a colon, followed by your quote that proves your sentence, proves your statement. All right, so hopefully that they will help you. Those methods will help you to embed your quotes more comfortably. It will be great to see this in action in your next essay for your literature studies. Thank you.